The rain hammered against the tall glass windows of the interrogation room at General Hospital, each drop sliding down like tears that had nowhere else to go. Inside, Ethan sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, hands trembling as if they no longer belonged to him. His face was pale, drawn tight with exhaustion and something far heavier, grief that had not yet fully formed words. Across from him sat Detective Joe, calm, patient, but sharp-eyed in the way only someone who had seen too many tragedies could be. "Start from the beginning," Joe said quietly. "No skipping, no protecting anyone, just the truth." Ethan swallowed hard. His throat felt like sandpaper. "It started 3 weeks ago," he said finally. "The night Delilah didn't come home." Ethan closed his eyes and the memory came rushing back. Delilah had kissed him goodbye that evening like nothing was wrong. She was wearing that blue coat he always told her made her eyes look softer, calmer, like the world couldn't touch her. "I'll be back by 9, she had said, grabbing her purse. "It's just a quick meeting downtown, nothing serious." But Ethan had noticed something off, a hesitation in her voice, a flicker in her eyes. "You sure?" he had asked. Delilah smiled too quickly. "Of course. Don't worry so much." That was the last time he saw her alive. By 10 o'clock, he had already called her twice. Voicemail. By 11, he was pacing the apartment. By midnight, panic had taken root in his chest like a burning coal. And by dawn, Ethan was at General Hospital, demanding answers no one could give him. "She never showed up for work," the receptionist had said. "We thought she was sick." But Delilah never called in sick, not ever. Joe leaned forward slightly. "When did you realize something was wrong?" Ethan gave a hollow laugh. "The moment I found her phone." It had been outside a small alley behind the cafe where she was supposed to meet someone. The screen was cracked, the battery dead. But what chilled Ethan wasn't the phone itself. It was the blood on the case, small, smudged, but real. Delilah's favorite silver ring was still attached to the phone strap, and she never took that ring off, not even in the shower. Joe's expression tightened. "You reported it immediately?" "Yes," Ethan said. But that's when things got worse. Police had searched the alley, found nothing, no body, no witnesses willing to talk, no surveillance footage that showed anything useful. Too clean, too perfect, like someone had planned it. Joe tapped his pen once against the table. "You think this was targeted?" Ethan looked up sharply. "I know it was." His voice cracked. Delilah wasn't random. She knew something she wasn't supposed to know. For the first time since the interrogation began, Ethan hesitated. Joe noticed. "What did she tell you before she disappeared?" Ethan rubbed his face hard, as if trying to erase the memory. "She had been acting strange for weeks," he admitted. "Phone calls she wouldn't take in front of me. Emails she deleted immediately. She stopped sleeping properly. Kept waking up at night, writing notes and hiding them when I walked in." Joe's eyes narrowed. "Did you read any of them?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I should have, but I didn't want to invade her privacy. I thought it was work stress." A bitter laugh escaped him. "God, I was so wrong." Delilah worked at a biomedical research division connected loosely to General Hospital. Nothing high profile on the surface. Routine studies, patient data analysis, experimental drug monitoring. But Joe had already heard whispers about internal leaks in that department. Ethan leaned forward suddenly. "There was a file," he said, "a USB drive she hid in our apartment. I found it after she disappeared." Joe's expression sharpened. "What was on it?" Ethan hesitated again. "Names," he said quietly, "dates, transactions, and a list of people who weren't supposed to exist in the system." Joe froze slightly. "Black market medical data?" Ethan nodded slowly. "And Delilah was trying to expose it." 3 days after Delilah vanished, Ethan received a message. No number, no name, just a single sentence. "Stop looking or she stays gone." Ethan had shown it to the police immediately, but the response had been lukewarm, dismissive even. A scare tactic, they told him. Probably unrelated. Joe frowned. You didn't believe that. I couldn't, Ethan said. Because the next day, someone broke into our apartment. Nothing was stolen. Only Delilah's files were gone. Every last trace, except one. A single torn page left behind on the kitchen counter. A hospital access code circled in red ink. Joe's pen stopped moving. That access code, he said slowly. You brought it here? Yes, Ethan replied. Joe leaned back, expression darkening. That code belongs to a restricted lab wing. Only a handful of people can access it. Ethan met his eyes. And one of those people works right here in General Hospital. Silence stretched between them. The rain outside grew heavier. Joe stood abruptly. When was the last time anyone saw Delilah alive besides you? Ethan thought hard. The cafe meeting, he said. She told me she was meeting a whistleblower, someone who wanted to give her proof but was scared. Joe nodded slowly. And you know who that whistleblower was? Ethan shook his head. No, but I think Delilah was set up. Joe left the interrogation room briefly, returning with a file of his own. He dropped it on the table. We pulled financial records tied to Delilah's research division, he said. There were unusual transfers, large sums routed through shell accounts. Ethan's stomach twisted. And? Joe flipped a page. One of the accounts was opened under a false identity, but the access logs show it was frequently used from inside General Hospital. Ethan felt the room spin slightly. Someone inside did this, he whispered. Joe nodded. Yes. Ethan's voice dropped to almost nothing. She didn't just disappear, he said. She was erased. Joe didn't deny it. Instead, he said, Tell me about the night of the meeting again. Everything you remember, even the smallest detail. Ethan closed his eyes again. This time, the memory felt sharper, more dangerous. Delilah had been nervous that evening, not obvious fear, but controlled tension, the kind that builds when someone knows they are being watched. Before leaving, she had paused in the doorway. I might be late, she had said. Text me, Ethan replied. She hesitated. Then, softly, if I don't answer, don't come looking for me right away. That sentence had haunted him ever since. Joe leaned forward. Did she meet anyone? Yes, Ethan said. At least that's what the cafe staff told police later. A man, dark coat, early 40s, didn't order anything, just sat with her in the corner booth. Joe flipped through notes. We never identified him, he muttered. Ethan clenched his fists. But I think I know who he is. Joe looked up sharply. Ethan hesitated. Someone in administration, he said carefully. Someone who has access to everything. Joe's eyes narrowed. Name? Ethan exhaled shakily. I don't have proof. That's not what I asked. Ethan finally said it. Dr. Halston. The name hit the room like a gunshot. Joe didn't react immediately, but his eyes hardened. I've heard that name before, he said slowly. Hours passed. The rain didn't stop. Neither did Ethan's voice. He told Joe everything, how Delilah had been meticulous, how she had feared someone was watching her, how she had begun leaving small hidden notes in case something happened. But there was one thing Ethan still couldn't accept. They never found her body. Joe noticed. You're holding on to hope, he said gently. Ethan shook his head violently. No, he said. I'm holding on to reality. Joe studied him carefully. What if she's alive? The question broke something in Ethan's expression. For a moment he looked like he might collapse. Then he whispered, Then she's in hell I can't reach. Joe stood again, suddenly energized. I need you to come with me, he said. Where? Joe picked up his coat. To the restricted wing. If Delilah left anything behind, it's there. Ethan froze. That place is locked down. Joe's expression was grim. Not anymore. The corridors of General Hospital at night felt different. Colder, emptier, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Ethan followed Joe through security clearance doors, each step heavier than the last. Finally, they reached the restricted wing. Joe scanned a badge. The door clicked open. Inside, everything was too clean, too sterile, like nothing bad had ever happened there. But Ethan felt it immediately. Delilah had been here. In a small storage room behind a locked cabinet, Joe found it, a sealed evidence bag. Inside, Delilah's coat, her blue coat. Ethan dropped to his knees instantly. "No," he whispered. Joe didn't move. There was no blood on it, no signs of struggle, only a small folded note in the pocket. Ethan's hands shook as he opened it. 3 words. Joe stared at the note. "This wasn't written after she disappeared," he said slowly. "This was written before." Ethan looked up sharply. "What are you saying?" Joe met his eyes. "I'm saying Delilah knew she was walking into a trap." Silence swallowed the room. Then Joe added something quieter. "And I think she planned for it." Ethan's breath caught. "You think she's alive?" Joe didn't answer immediately. Then, "I think she wanted us to believe she's dead." Back in the interrogation room hours later, Ethan sat alone again. Joe had gone to make calls. But Ethan knew the truth was no longer simple. Delilah wasn't just a victim anymore. She was part of something larger, something dangerous, something unfinished. Ethan looked down at his hands. For the first time since the nightmare began, his grief shifted, not into acceptance, but into resolve. And when Joe returned, Ethan looked up and said quietly, "If Delilah is alive, then whoever did this just made a very big mistake." Joe didn't respond, but he didn't disagree either. Outside, the rain finally stopped, and somewhere in the city, a secret was still breathing. Thank you for watching. Write what you think about it. Subscribe to the channel.